or your money back. Here we go.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1601 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Monaris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Paul Farberman. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Mike. Good to be back home in Toronto.
Where do you call home these days?
I call Toronto home, but I've lived in Los Angeles over half my life.
I don't know if you can call Toronto home anymore if you've been in Los Angeles. So you're from L.A., and they have warmer temperatures in L.A. than they do here. Although, you came, it's quite mild out today.
It's mild, and yesterday was here. Beautiful, beautiful sunny day. Made even sunnier and brighter by me going to see my Toronto Maple Leafs win a hockey game last night.
Just, can you help us win in April?
I'll be there. I'll be back. Yeah.
Like you, I'm assuming you're a lifelong Leaf fan.
Yes, I live and suffer and die with them, yes.
So I'll just remind you that in the last 2 decades, so the last 20 years, the Maple Leafs have won precisely one round of playoff hockey. One round in 20 years. And I say that because, we won last night. That's great. What a wonderful regular season team this is. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Morgan Riley. What a great regular season team. But what matters to me, Paul, is what happens in April and May, and maybe for the first time in franchise history, June.
That's what it's all about. I'm old enough to remember being alive in 1967 and standing on the street on Bay Street in front of Old City Hall with a little sign and a little picture of Dave Keon and the Stanley Cup.
Was Dave Keon your favorite player back then?
No, my favorite player was always Red Kelly.
Okay. Well, listen, soon, not yet, of course, we'll be shouting out Ridley Funeral Home. At some point, there'll be no living person on this planet who was a part of the 1967 Stanley Cup champion Maple Leafs. But I'm so glad to meet you because, this is going to be quite the adventure, this 90 minutes we're going to spend together, because your name comes up quite often on Toronto Mic'd. This name, Paul Farberman, just kind of comes up. And the first time I really took note was in the episode with Catherine McClanahan, who came on Toronto Mic'd because she had just seen the 299 Queen Street West documentary about Much Music. And she flew herself from LA. She's also in California. And she was disappointed that it was alluded in the doc, although not explicitly stated, it was alluded in the documentary that Erica M was the first female VJ. But you know better, right?
Absolutely no better. Catherine was absolutely, no question about it, the first female VJ to ever come on to Much Music on the broadcast.
No, absolutely. So she came on my program. So we could just definitively state for the record, Catherine McClanahan, the first woman VJ. And I'm going to try to keep it chronological. I realize I'm already out of order, but she dropped this fun fact. She shared with the FOTMs on Toronto Mic'd, she shared the fact that she was at the recording of Tears Are Not Enough. How did Catherine get into that studio that fateful day in 1985, I want to say? How did she get in there to witness the recording of Tears Are Not Enough?
I was at the time Vice President Business Affairs, the lawyer for what was then still called CBS Records, which became Sony. And since they were actually putting out the record, the actual recording of Tears Are Not Enough, I had the great honor and privilege, really, of sitting in that studio, Manta Sound, on Adelaide Street, and every artist, the biggest, and everyone who was there they had to sign a release. And I sat at a desk. Everyone came in. I got to see everyone and sign them. And I was fortunate enough to invite Catherine to come join down for that very, very historic day.
She tells me you guys were dating at the time.
At that time, that's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
what a lucky man.
It was a very, very good time in my life, yeah.
So your plus one was Catherine McClenahan, got her in the door. I mean, so we're going to get back to this. We're going to try to keep it chronological order. There is a lot of ground I want to cover with you because you came up in that episode. You came up in the episode with Jonathan Gross. There's a whole Gary's component to your life and times, but let's go back. And by the way, also, Rob Pruce from the Spoons wants me to say hello to you. Says you were one of the Spoons lawyers back in the olden days. He says you're a wonderful guy, and he hasn't seen you in ages.
Very true. I actually just found a big poster of the Spoons, one of their albums, and gave it to a friend of mine in Toronto yesterday, to Derek, who was involved in Gary Topp's book. Yeah, I saw Derek and gave him a whole bunch of stuff I collected, like the Spoons poster, a poster of Michael Giordano's album release party at the CN Tower, and a bunch of other great memorabilia.
You know, they're making a documentary about the CN Tower. And, okay, well, we got to get that in there. Okay, that's a Retro Ontario tidbit. Okay, and you mentioned Gary Topp. So, again, this is all kind of teaser. We're going to get into this, but you may know I moderated a panel discussion at the Red Room at the Masonic Temple for the release of Gary Topp's book, He Hijacked My Brain. And, we had a great panel there. And, of course, Ivor Hamilton was on the panel, for example. You know Ivor.
Of course, yeah.
And the police picnic was one of the, key topics I was curious about, the police picnic at Gary's presentation. But you're also you'll state definitively on the record right now if this is true or false. Was that your idea, the police picnic? It
was my idea to get the police, two guys, Wolfgang Siebert and Chris, I forget Chris' last name now, but they had seen this farm in Oakville. They had worked on US Festival, other festivals and production, and thought this site would make a great place for a concert, but they didn't have any access to talent. And being friends with the Garys, I said, Garys, we got this great venue in Oakville. I've been out there. What do you think? And they said, let's go after the police.
Okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, no Paul Farberman, no police picnic.
That's true.
That's true. Okay. Well,
but also no Gary's, no police picnic. Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure, because they had a relationship with the police, of course, and they brought them to they started at the Horseshoe Tavern. I don't know. Depends who you ask. But I'm deciding now about 15 people at these Horseshoe Tavern police shows.
I was not there. And I think the Edge might have been before that even.
I think. No, I think the first is Horseshoe. Yeah. Because then Roxanne breaks. And then they don't have a problem getting 15 people to buy a ticket to see the police anymore. Everything changes after that. Okay, so let's go back. You mentioned you're a Toronto guy. And by the way, okay, sorry, but you also come up because I'm at a Stu Stone movie release, and they're sitting there is snow. And I don't mean the snow that's going to fall at some point this season. I'm talking about Darren O'Brien in former Snow. And you work closely with Snow, right?
Absolutely. I love the man. I love him.
I'm going to get back to this later, but can you now, because this is a recording and everything you state is legally binding. You know this as an attorney, okay? Can you get Snow to pay a visit to me in the basement for a conversation about his tremendous career?
I'll talk to him about it while I'm in Toronto.
Is that a promise?
That's a promise that I will talk to him about it in Toronto, and I'm pretty sure I can get it happen.
That's pretty sure. I can tell you're a lawyer because that's
pretty sure.
I think so, but that's not a definitive statement. Okay, so you're going to do your best to get Darren O'Brien, better known as Snow, into the TMDS basement here.
He is the most wonderful human being, charming, and has stories that could go on all day here.
I'm going to need a bigger hard drive is what you're telling me. Listen, I'll make the room for Snow. I can't believe it. Okay, so I mentioned you're a lawyer. So let's go back here because some of the artists you work with right out of the hopper here. So you went to Osgoode Hall Law School and you're called to the bar. So you start as a lawyer, but what made you want to specialize in entertainment law?
I was a drummer growing up as a kid and played in
There you go. If you get inspired.
yeah, played in a bunch of local bands and literally with people that I grew up with in high school, like Ben Mink, still one of my dearest friends, and Ben, of course, went on to acclaim with Bruce Coburn, Murray McLaughlin, co-wrote Constant Craving for K.D. Lang. He is best friends with Geddy Lee. He's appeared live on stage with Rush, and we're still great friends. Ben's been a very successful songwriter, artist, producer. I played in bands with another Toronto guy named Fred Mandel, who many people might not know that name, but he played through Bob Ezrin on the Dark Side of the Moon.
Wow.
He toured as a member for about 7 years, I believe, with Alice Cooper. Then for maybe 5-6 years with Elton John's band. Toured 2 years the world as part of Queen. And also...
Yeah, but any bands we've heard of? Come on, stop with these
and also
obscure
part
names.
of Supertramp.
Wow.
Yeah, so these are just local people.
All right, well, shout out to Bob Roper. I always think of Bob when I think
Yeah.
of Supertramp. Okay.
And one thing, crazy thing about Ben Mink, we were in high school. He was in the house band called Mary Lou Horner, the house band at the Rock Pile. And I still have the little poster that says Led Zeppelin featuring Jimmy Page and Mary Lou Horner.
Wow, and the Rock Pile is 888 Young, right?
Right, Masonic Temple.
Right.
And so Ben in high school opened up for the first Led Zeppelin show.
Okay.
And it's interesting that the poster says Led Zeppelin featuring Jimmy Page because their album had just been released. So Led Zeppelin, people didn't know them. So they had to add Jimmy Page's name to the banner.
Because he's with the Birds. Or the Yardbirds.
For the Yardbirds,
Right,
yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. You mentioned Geddy Lee. So when you're now going to be an entertainment lawyer because you were a drummer. Shout out to David Quinton Steinberg, by the way, if he's listening. He's a drummer too.
Of course, and I know David very well. And fun enough, in collecting my memorabilia, I just handed Derek yesterday a David Quinton 45 on Bomb Records that I had in my collection.
Okay, because he was at that aforementioned panel discussion I moderated at the Red Room because he was with the Mods and they played the Last Pogo.
Right.
Okay, it's all going to come full
And of
circle.
course, as you probably know, early in my career, I did a lot of the legal work for Rush. And
I do know.
full circle comes
I'm setting
around.
you up, buddy.
At the hockey game last night, who did I bump into? My dear, dear, wonderful, wonderful friend and human being, Ray Daniels.
Wow.
The manager of Rush, of course, yeah.
Manager of Rush. Okay, so maybe in this early part of your career, so you're an entertainment lawyer. Shout out. So you worked with some pretty big acts in this country, Rush being probably the biggest, but Rush, and I got to shout out Cousin Jano, who's listening at home, that she's a big Saga fan. Saga or Saga? What do you think is the proper pronunciation? Saga, right?
I always say Saga. Yeah.
Saga, yeah. I don't know. What's the Saga
But yeah, I
coming from?
worked closely with them and Tom Cochran and Red Rider and Triumph. Still stay in touch with Gil and Mike sometimes. And one of the most interesting people I met in my very beginning of my career was Jim Carrey. I met Jim. My sister was at a little comedy club on Eglinton near Bathurst called Giggles. It was a storefront. And she sees this kid there and she comes home and I had just graduated. She says, I met this kid. He was so funny. He has no lawyer. You should go meet him. And I did. And I was Jim Carrey's lawyer in the very beginning of his career when he was only doing impressions.
Right.
Went down to L.A. when he moved to L.A. Remember going to his place. He had just had a baby. He had given up doing impressions. He was trying to make a career as an actor. Then he invited me one day to come to the Comedy Store on Sunset. There were like 10 people there. He was trying to do some very strange impressions that became a lot of the characters that he did on Living Color.
Right, like Fire Marshal Bill and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
weird stuff. And I eventually lost touch with him. I've seen him since then, but I didn't, unfortunately, go on to work with him. Yeah.
It's funny because he does a pretty good parody of Snow.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible.
I
Yeah.
just realized how this is going to be one of those mind blows where everything's going to connect. I had on this very program, he's a hairdresser. His name is Gary Chowan. Do you know the name Gary Chowan by any chance? So Gary Chowan would cut hair for the Agincourt studio where, I don't know, all the stuff was filmed there in Agincourt, right? The old Channel 9
Of course, I know.
studios,
Yeah,
of course.
right off the 401 there.
And he takes credit for getting Jim Carrey like his first ever television anything. Like, anyways, he's taking credit for this, and I don't know how to like validate these claims. But do you know before In Living Color, do you have any like off the top of your head you can name check any Jim Carrey television before In Living Color?
Well, I know the people who really started Jim's career were clearly in Toronto were David Holliff, who also managed Howie Mandel early in his career here in Toronto, and a guy named Ron Scribner was the agent, Ron Scribner Agency on Eglinton. And they were the...
Okay, so I'm still out trying to corroborate the Gary Chowan story.
So
but
I don't know
I like to
yeah.
believe. I'm like Fox Mulder. I want to believe, okay? All right, a lot of mind blows here. And now I'm thinking Jim Carrey. I'm thinking Mark Breslin came on this program to talk about how he saw Jim Carrey at Yuck Yucks, because Mark, of course, owned Yuck Yucks, and didn't think he was very good and didn't think he had much of a future. So, Mark Breslin, you're wrong, buddy. Right? Did you talk to Jim any time recently?
Not since I saw him a few years ago at this charity event in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah.
I once saw a clip of him on Q, I think, CBC's Q, and he name-checked Ralph Benmergui, and I pulled the clip because Ralph comes over often. He's a good FOTM, and I used to produce his show, and I played it for Benmergui, and then I had this fantasy if I could get Jim Carrey to, because he won't know me from Adam and would never do Toronto Mike, but Jim Carrey, maybe he would talk to Ralph Benmergui. This is a fantasy I have.
It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to work on that. Hey, I want to. So there's of course, you.
And he does. He's a huge Toronto Maple Leaf fan. Jim is still to this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the great comics like Mike Myers,
Exactly.
Jim Carrey, they all got to be there. Mike Myers got his start in The King of Kensington. I don't know if Jim Carrey was old enough to get on that show, but I want to ask you about SCTV here before we move you on to Sony and elsewhere. But are you the lawyer for the Second City Comedy Troupe?
Well, it's very interesting that you brought that up today, because what you don't know is, in sort of before I left home in LA a few days ago, I was going through some things just to look about some stuff, old stuff that I had in my files, and I pulled out a copy, and I actually have it here, of an agreement with RCA Records and all the members of SCTV to do a comedy album that unfortunately never got signed. And it was interesting. It was a guy named Dan Loggins, was the A&R for RCA Records in New York. Yes, the brother of Kenny Loggins.
I was going to ask.
And he was...
Yacht Rock's having a moment, you know.
He had been up here, seen some stuff, was a big fan of SCTV, and we had this whole agreement drawn up, ready to go, and it never happened because everyone's schedule independently was so busy, it just never happened.
Well, now I'm thinking of Take Off to the Great White, which is Geddy Lee, of course, and Bob and Doug McKenzie.
But how I got to work with SCTV is, at the time I was working with a lawyer in Toronto named William Hingson, and he represented Andrew Alexander, who was the founder of Second City, and he represented Andrew, and so that's how I got involved with SCTV.
Well, I'm going to ask you some obvious questions along the way, but one is, Martin Scorsese recorded a reunion. Were you at the reunion by any chance?
I was not.
You weren't? Okay. Not worth the flight. Well, even Rick Moranis was there, and the late, great Joe Flaherty, of course, and everybody else. And this documentary is rotting away in a vault somewhere in the Scorsese compound. I don't think we're ever going to see this documentary.
Well,
any insight? You must know people.
Yeah.
Free the footage.
Yeah, we got to get to the bottom of that.
I'll make the movie with Retro Ontario if I have to. My goodness gracious. Okay, so if any gaps along the way, you let me know. But I know you end up as Vice President Business Affairs for Sony Music Canada. So if I skip anything exciting, you chime right in there, okay, Paul?
You got it.
Okay, so this is kind of on my way here. So it's while you're there that you end up at the Tears Are Not Enough recording?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Please, anything. I mean, look, I'm begging you here, Paul, please. Okay, I spend many hours on this program talking about Tears Are Not Enough and breaking that down. one of the clips I play for every FOTM cast is David Foster is telling Neil Young to get it in key or something, and Neil says something to the effect of, "That's my sound, man."
Exactly. And it's very interesting you bring that up because, again, for anyone who's listening, Mike and I have not talked about
Oh yeah, no,
what we're talking about today. And it's
because I wouldn't let you talk to me about it.
No, I asked Mike before coming here today, do you want to go over what we might talk about? And he said no.
No.
I said, okay.
Because that's no fun if we do that.
Yeah, so he doesn't. It's very interesting the things you're bringing up, but no, because there are two things I put in my suitcase before I came here. One was the SCTV recording contract to do an album, and I brought all my memorabilia, the records, the media sheet, and everything from Tears Are Not Enough that I still kept because I'm a real pack rat and collecting stuff.
Well, it's good.
So
and you're going to gift all that to me right now.
Yeah, but during that recording session, the only time I said to David Foster that I want to be in the sound booth because I was such a huge fan of all the stars there of Neil Young, and it's very small, so you can't have a lot of people in there. I said, but when Neil's singing, I want to be in there, and I was just for that part.
Yeah, he's a living legend. Love that guy. In fact, back in the day before people came in the side door, you had to walk. But I have a whole art drawing of Neil Young in the hallway upstairs. Love Neil Young so much. I had tickets to his second Toronto show, and he canceled it. He canceled the second show.
I'm lucky this summer. He was supposed to do the Hollywood Bowl in L.A., but he was also playing. His first show on tour was actually in San Diego, and I didn't know that. I was visiting my daughters who were in college, San Diego State University, and I see a sign, Neil Young. I go, what the fuck is Neil Young doing at a campus? These kids won't even know who he is, but it's a beautiful outdoor venue there. And I called my dear friend from Toronto, Arthur Fogel. Of course, is one of the most senior executives in the world at Live Nation in LA.
Right.
And he arranged a great ticket for me to go. And I saw Neil's show there with Crazy Horse. It was incredible. And as funny things happen, the Hollywood Bowl show got canceled. So if I had waited for that show, I wouldn't have seen him on this tour.
See, I actually have a similar regret, which is there were two Toronto shows, and then there was 2 months later he was coming back, and I had an opportunity to go to the first show, and I passed because I had tickets to the second show, and I have seen Neil Young before, but I figure I'm going to catch him in August or whatever, and then he canceled my show. So now it's like I don't know how many more shows, how many more tours he's got left in him, but I gotta hope he comes back.
I'm sure you don't know this about me, but I, at 16 years old, went to Woodstock. And the reason I went to Woodstock, I mean, it was incredible talent, but what tipped me over the edge was when I found out, oh my God, Neil Young is playing for the first time ever with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I have to be there.
And you're lucky you were there because he wouldn't let the film crew film him for the documentary.
Yeah. And not only was I at Woodstock at 16 years old, I was backstage, on stage. I have pictures that I've taken from the front of the stage of some of the artists. I only have 12 pictures because I had an Instamatic camera with that little roll. And when I ran out of film, there wasn't exactly a place to buy film at Woodstock.
Paul, this is unbelievable. So yeah, keep this coming. That's unbelievable. But somebody who was not at Woodstock, although she should have been at Woodstock, but she went on a talk show instead. But she wrote a great song about Woodstock. Is Joni Mitchell?
Yes, indeed.
So I'm taking you back to that recording of Tears Are Not Enough because I got a few more questions here. But so Joni Mitchell's there, Gordon Lightfoot's there. Mm-hmm. I mean, Geddy Lee, of course, is there. You know, Bryan Adams, who helped co-write it with Jim Valance, I suppose, the words at least.
Absolutely.
And then David Foster, of course, was the producer.
Richard Manuel from the band.
Okay, some questions I've had for a while now. So Leona Boyd's been on this program a few times.
And congratulations, Leona. I understand you've just been
appointed?
I don't know.
I think you're appointed to the Order of Canada.
Something, yeah.
She got an upgrade, as they.
Exactly,
she's got an upgrade here. She dated the former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
No, I was very good friends with Leona for many years, and yeah.
She had a mystery because there's in the doc that was released in '85. She's being escorted into the building by somebody, but she was never able to figure. She never knew who that person was, and she always wondered. And we did crack the code. I'm trying to remember who it was actually. Not Honeymoon Suite. It was a member of a band that'll come to me in a minute here. Jeez, can't remember right now. But I want to ask you about Mark Holmes. So, do you have any memory of Mark Holmes at this recording? Because he infamously arrives at this benefit for famine relief in a limo.
Yes, of course. I actually remember he was actually one of the artists who was signed to CBS Records at the time. And yeah, he was there with all his, puffy hair. And,
Of course.
and, Mark's a great guy. I'm still friends with him. I just saw their reunion show a few months ago where they were touring with
Platinum
Billy
Blonde?
with Billy Idol. Yeah, Platinum
Yeah.
Blonde. And they were touring with Platinum Blonde this summer. And but Mark, in his younger early days of fame, had a rock and roll attitude, and thought he was, bigger ego. He was one of the newer stars there, but he had a
Right.
bigger ego than the stars who maybe.
Well, because Neil Young took a cab there.
Yeah. But Mark, I love you. But the facts are the facts.
I've been trying to get Mark Holmes on this program. No, I'm trying to think of who else was young. Well, Corey Hart was there. He was a young up and coming kind of guy, and Bryan Adams was still
Yeah.
pretty young at that time. So, before we leave, Tears Are Not Enough. Is there anything somebody like me should know? You were there. Is there anything like that I should know about the recording?
But what's interesting, you mentioned Bryan Adams just now, and Corey Hart. People I know both well, and it's an overstated generalization, but they are such nice guys. And Canadians, really, as a generalization, we're nice people. and it's just interesting because they are all those people's names you mentioned. They're really, to this day, great, humble, proud Canadian guys.
And I just remember the band that had the member escort Leona Boyd into the Manta Sound. Is that's
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a member of Loverboy.
Ah,
So somebody in Loverboy.
it was probably it was Mike Reno.
No, it wasn't
No?
Mike Reno because
No?
Mike Reno.
Mike was there.
Yeah,
and
Mike.
he
Well,
sang.
Mike had a big part in the in the
And I'm
song.
still in touch with them. I saw them.
Can you get me Mike Reno on this program? You know what I'm
going
going to,
to
Paul? From now on, would you be the booker of the Toronto Mike podcast for 2025?
Yeah, we should get Mike on here. I can't believe he's not done it.
And I have had Tom Cochran on, but I had to do it at a golf course. But he did promise if you had a 90 minutes while he was in Toronto at some point, he would come by for a deeper dive. So we still need a longer episode of Tom Cochran. So I'm just throwing that out there too.
And you should get my dear friend Larry Gowan on if you haven't Mr. Gowan on.
We did it, but he
You
did
did?
it via
Okay, good.
Zoom. I would love to get a
Yeah.
sequel in here where he comes into the studio. Larry was great. But now, of course, we're skipping the obvious, which is it's about time Geddy Lee appear on Toronto Mic'd. What's going on there? Let's get Geddy Lee on Toronto Mic'd.
Well,
Let's
make
spend
it
the next
happen, all
hour
right?
talking
Yeah.
about all the people you're going to get on Toronto Mic'd here. Okay, so Tears Are Not Enough. How long did you date Catherine McClanahan for?
It was about a year. Yeah.
Okay, that's still best year of your life.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All right, where do I go next? Can we go to IRS Records? And if I skip anything, you'll let me know, right? If I skip anything, I should
Yeah.
go.
So it's I worked on the police picnic with the Garys.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Sorry.
And well, but that's where I first met Miles Copeland.
Okay.
And it's interesting that Miles Copeland is the man who brought me to America, hired me to work at IRS Records, sponsored me for my visa, and yeah.
And he's the founder of IRS Records, and we're going to talk about REM and more here in a moment here. But let's go
Yeah.
back to that police picnic for a minute. Okay, so how did you just knew the Garys because you were representing all these musicians? Is that how you knew the Garys, or how do you know
not so
Gary
much.
Topp and Gary Cormier?
I think really just being a fan of music and going to a lot of shows, the Garys,
Sure.
and going to the Edge, which was also Ron Chapman ran the Edge, where they did shows there with
course.
Ron, and just really from going to shows, not so much from my clients, so much as just being a music fan.
Sure.
And yeah.
And then you kind of gave us a little origin story of the police picnic. But did you have anything to do with the second police picnic? Or
No, I after the first police picnic, I decided I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to be an executive. I'm not going to be a promoter. It was an incredible experience. I loved the experience, but realized let it be done by the people who really know how to do it.
Okay, because I know the second police picnic features Spoons, the aforementioned Spoons, and so you were their lawyer. So they're one of the bands you worked with when you were at Sony. Like where did the Spoons?
No,
come
they
from?
were I think signed to, if I'm not mistaken, to Ready Records was their label.
Right. Okay. So IRS Records, the most obvious name before they, I would say sold out, but they still control their own destiny. So it's one of those sellouts where they can still make their own music. So why the hell not get more distribution or whatever? But REM, I want to talk about.
Yeah, IRS Records was the kind of label that if you were a music fan of that style of music, you would buy something that came out on IRS, even if you didn't know the artist, because if it was on IRS, that was like a stamp of approval that it was probably pretty cool, good music.
Well, that's sort of why you would go to a Gary show.
Yeah, there you go.
Because Gary's weren't going to bring somebody in unless they legit and like the artist.
Yeah,
and their
you may
music.
not have heard of the artist, but if the Garys are doing it, must be something good.
Well, I mean, the Garys would, for example, bring in the English beat, for example, and they were at our IRS. So, like, just I'm going to run down some names and any stories you want to share. But in addition to working with REM, which I can't even imagine, the Go-Go's, Oingo Boingo, Fine Young Cannibals, The Alarm, Stuart Copeland, who you mentioned earlier, Timbuk 3, the English Beat, Concrete Blonde. Like, this is amazing. You're working with these artists.
It was an incredible, amazing time. It's interesting why I went there. At the time, I was, working at CBS Records, Sony here, and I was a senior executive there. And I knew that if I played my cards right and stayed here, there was a chance that I could one day be the president of Sony Music Canada. No guarantee, of course, but there was, a chance.
Right.
And then the opportunity came up to go to IRS Records, which was, a small independent label, but a pretty cool label. But I was a little concerned about leaving here, and I didn't really have friends and family in LA. And I decided, well, look, if it doesn't work out, I could always come back. And so I sort of, and at the time I was single. I didn't own a home, so I had nothing, no wife or kids to worry about, or no mortgage. And I figured, pick up and go and take a shot. And so I did, moved to LA and got my visa and started working for that company with incredible artists, like you mentioned.
What a career. Were you at IRS when REM left?
Yes.
What was that like when the REM tells you they're gonna leave for one of the big companies?
They were great guys. Their management was really, really good people, and they just felt the reason really is they felt that as successful as they become, they wanted and thought they could achieve more success than they were getting internationally. And they had the opportunity to go to Warner Brothers, I'm pretty sure it was,
right?
Who were giving them all kinds of promises and commitments and probably
And they were going to stay out of their creative business.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
And they maybe did too. That was the plan. And I know they had a very civilized conversation with Miles Copeland and Jay Boberg, who ran IRS. It wasn't a party that was, it was a sore spot, but it was, I think Jay and Miles kind of understood. They'd been so successful for IRS, and so like, hey, good luck, guys. Let's, good luck in the future. And there was a good relationship still with them on past catalog things that happened.
Right. But, it sounds like Stuart Copeland you were referred to earlier, but Fine Young Cannibals, okay, you're there in 88. So when is the She Drives Me Crazy era? Are you there for that?
Yeah. It's
the
funny.
Raw and Uncooked? I'm trying to remember the name of this damn CD. The Raw and the Uncooked or something like that?
Yeah, no, you're reading my mind, because I was going to mention Fine Young Cannibals because it's one of those mysteries. It was such a big album. Roland Gift, incredible singer. And just like some of these great musicians, he didn't want to follow it up. Right. He was like, no, I'm done. Didn't want to go out and
He was like going to be an actor, right? I remember I saw him in Baghdad Cafe or something. Like he was doing some acting.
Didn't want to continue recording.
That's interesting, because he had there. Like I knew of him, Johnny. That's right. Before that big album, Johnny, we're worried. Won't you come? He does that falsetto, which I won't even try to do because people are gonna turn this thing off. But he followed the single on that album, the big album. So She Drives Me Crazy, of course, and then Good Times. Good Times or Good Thing? Good Thing, Good Thing.
Yeah.
Huge hit too. And you're right, I can't name a song after that album from Fine Young Cannibals.
No, they just decided to pack it in.
You almost have to respect that. I feel like that's kind of amazing to walk away, because these follow-up to the big album, sometimes they can suck and you'll still sell a ton, right?
Absolutely.
It's the tail of that big album. It's like you're going to sell, people are going to buy it week one, and then it'll have a big dip, but they're going to buy it right away. Okay, so you're at IRS. Any other memories of IRS you want to share before I move you over to Universal Pictures?
I loved working with Miles and Jay. I thought they were such creative people, innovative people. They both had a passion and love for the music, and it's sadly the kind of thing that doesn't really exist too much, with exception in the record business anymore.
Is it possible, because I almost say in the sentence, I'm almost like, Mike, they're so huge. How can you say this? But I actually still think REM are underappreciated and underrated.
I would definitely say so in terms of the mass appeal, in terms of they never, for what they did and the kind of style music they did, their characters, their personalities. Michael Stipe, incredibly creative, intelligent, individual.
And I always felt there was a little bit of Michael Stipe in our own Gord Downey.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I remember coming up to Toronto with Jay Bobrick, who ran the label for Miles, and we saw them, Gordon Tragic Hip, at a little club. I don't remember, it was in Kensington, on Augusta Avenue in Kensington Market, upstairs, little club, because they were
showcasing. What were they doing there?
Showcase.
Yeah,
Well, for
Jake Gold wanted.
to get them signed to the deal, and again, I'm not sure why it never happened, but
they signed with MCA, as I recall.
At some point, but IRS was looking to sign them, but never did though.
Fascinating. They had the EP, and then their first major rate debut is Up to Here in '89.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. My goodness gracious. Okay. All right. But this is kind of something very different, I find. You're still working in entertainment. You're an entertainment lawyer, for goodness sakes. But you're now working with Universal Pictures from 91 to 95. A few indie films. I just want to know if anyone out there has heard these indie films. We mentioned the Baghdad Cafe. Okay. I don't know how many people have seen that, but I love that movie. Jurassic Park? What is this indie? They were playing it at the Carlton Cinema, I think. Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Scent of a Woman, like Apollo 13. What the heck are you doing for like a movie like Jurassic Park? Which, by the way, coincidentally, before I knew you had anything to do with this movie, it's on Crave now, or Bell Media streaming service. And you Americans, I know you're a Toronto boy, but
right.
it just got added, and I watched it the other day, and because I wanted to see how it held up. And there's some of the CGI, I'm like, oh yeah, well that was early days, and we've come a long way. But mostly because of the practical effects and everything. What a great movie! Jurassic Park still holds up. What did you do with Jurassic Park?
Wait, and don't forget great music movie.
Dazed and Confused. Yeah, the soundtrack I bet you was more than the budget for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
So what
Me
are you
too.
doing? You're just working, because I don't even remember any music in Jurassic Park.
So I was responsible for, negotiating the composer agreements. Composer did the score, and as well as all the licensing of music for the film.
Gotcha.
And if there was a soundtrack album, which was much more
Like Dazed and
popular,
Confused.
then putting that together.
And
making
Reality
it,
Bites, too, was a big
Reality
soundtrack,
Bites was
too.
a huge soundtrack,
Loved it.
and those kind of things were so much fun to work on.
So they say basically what happens, does the filmmaker for Dazed and Confused, for example, does the filmmaker like, okay, I want to use these songs, and then, you go out and find out, you're going to need a bigger budget? Like instead of Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat.
Well, it's interesting about the budgets you mentioned, because when they're making films, even these huge studio pictures, the last thing is the music. Of course, the composer can't write the music until the film's shot. And so by the time you get to doing the music, the films are always over budget. And now there's no much, where's all the budget for the music? It's gone, because they had to use it for something else. So it's always on a shoestring, and trying to find, the money to get artists to perform new songs or write new songs, or pay for the licensing of the masters and the publishing. But and there's usually or often a music supervisor involved that the producer and the director work closely with, and that music supervisor suggests music that might be.
Because that's Dazed and Confused, for example, a movie I've seen many times.
Yeah, it's fun.
The soundtrack is everything.
Yeah.
And I owned the soundtrack on CD.
Yeah.
So you owe me a few bucks there. But
I proudly have a gold record on my wall from that movie. Yeah.
Was there any examples of like a song that the music supervisor really wanted for a movie we've heard of, but simply was out of budget or simply couldn't be attained? That's a big question, but
none that I recall.
Okay. And is it Reality Bites? Like sometimes I confuse my Gen X movies, but does Reality Bites, is that the movie with My Sharona in it? or am I confusing my Gen X? Maybe I'm thinking of. I feel like
I don't
my
remember.
Sharona. Okay,
Yeah, I
you
don't
can't
know.
remember. It's been a long
I
time.
don't think
here.
so. I don't think that was in.
All right, I'll Google it in a minute when I
Yeah.
get you rocking on the next topic.
Yeah.
But these are some big. I mean, these are. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than Jurassic Park. There's not. I can't say. Oh, what's bigger than Jurassic Park? I guess. Well, nowadays with inflation.
But I do
there's a
remember
big-
on Schindler's List before it actually got into the stores when there were CDs in the world, Steven Spielberg's name was spelt wrong, and we all.
Oh my
Our
God.
whole department went.
Well, he was an up and coming filmmaker. Nobody had heard of him.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're excused there. I've Googled Reality Bites. Yeah, it is my Sharona.
All right.
In Reality Bites soundtrack. I'm reading now
Yeah.
the. Okay, and of course the Lisa Loeb song comes out of that,
Of course, yeah.
and that was directed. I think Ethan Hawke directed that
Yeah,
video, if
yeah.
I remember correctly. Here, they may or may not have been dating, but I can see Juliana Hatfield 3 are in there. This is taking me. All I Want Is You from U2 is on that soundtrack. And Crowded House is on there.
Yeah, it's
Okay, everybody.
incredible music, yeah.
You had a role in that. That's a
Yeah.
mind blow right there. Okay, so we're just warming up here. Okay,
And I loved working at Universal Pictures and then subsequently Fox because, when you're a director like IRS, you're involved with the music, but it's a particular style of rock music, pretty much. And when you're working at a film studio
College
like
rock.
that, it could be rock, it could be country, it could be opera, it could be classical, it could be any style of music. And it was such an eye opener for me to have that opportunity to work with so many and working with, the number one composers on the planet Earth.
John Williams, you're
Yeah,
talking
oh,
about.
God, yeah.
That's it. Still with us.
Yeah, John
No
Williams.
shout out to Ridley Funeral Home required.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And then, of course, eventually with James Horner. And yeah.
Okay, well we're gonna talk Celine Dion in a moment here,
Yeah.
but we got to get you. So 20th Century Fox, you move over there in the mid 90s.
Yes. And I learned a life's lesson in moving.
Can I ask you? The grass is always greener. What is your life lesson?
It's exactly right. I loved working at Universal Pictures. My
Yeah.
boss, Harry Garfield, I was hired by Burt Berman. Burt left, and Harry Garfield, who was my buddy working alongside me, he got the promotion to that job. He was like my best friend, became my boss. And one day, the same job that I had, same title, Vice President, Business Affairs Music, came available at 20th Century Fox.
Okay.
And I spoke to them, and they were offering a lot more money. And I went back to Harry and said, Harry, he said, Paul, and nothing I can do. And I went, well, I went to Fox. And the fact is, I met with the people there. Robert Kraft was my boss who hired me, Matt Walden. I love those guys. Till this day I do. Still in touch with them. But I was also at Universal, when I worked for Burt and Harry, we were the music department, and we were completely separate. I was a lawyer, but I had nothing to do with the legal department. We were in music, and I was in the music department.
Right.
At Fox, it was split. I was sort of reporting half to the music and half to the legal department. But at this time, I was a far cry from sort of being a stuffy lawyer in my mind. And I didn't see eye to eye with the people who ran the legal business affairs side at Fox. And I was not happy there. I wasn't miserable. I mean, I loved my job there, but it was like if Harry at Universal had called me and said, Paul, the guy we hired to replace you, it's not working out. Can you come back? I would have said, okay, I'll be there tomorrow.
Right.
So the lesson was I always tell people, when you're thinking of moving to a new job and it looks so great, remember this, where you are right now, you know the players, you know the playing field, you know the good and the bad. Where you're going, it may look incredible, but no matter how good it looks, until you're there on the job, you don't know. So just think long and hard when you're thinking of moving.
The
for another
devil you
job.
know, right? The
Yeah.
devil you know.
Yeah, but things did work out at Fox, and then I certainly wasn't miserable there, but I was rescued.
Okay, before we get you out of Fox, we
Yeah.
won't spend much time there.
Yeah.
But I'll just shout out some of the films you worked on, and then
Oh.
there's a TV show that's very near and dear to my heart I want to ask you about. But Independence Day, so you're back to the little indie films.
Yeah.
Okay? Independence Day, that thing you do,
Oh, that was fun.
and then
Yeah.
the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet with
Juliet,
Leonardo
yeah.
DiCaprio and
Incredible,
Claire
yeah.
Danes.
We're back, great memories, yeah.
And The Truth About Cats and Dogs. I remember this as well.
Yes.
But I got to ask you about The Simpsons. So The
Yeah.
Simpsons was the big Fox show. And can you share what were you doing on The Simpsons?
Not a lot, to be honest, because it was just kind of a smooth operating ship. The people who ran the TV division, a guy named Jeff Bywater and Mary Jo Manella was involved in the song music there. They kind of ran a very tight ship, and I didn't have to do too much, to be honest with them.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's my Simpsons
Yeah.
quotient filled. Still love the Simpsons here. Okay.
I hadn't been on the Fox lot for many, many years until last week when I went to a screening of the new movie, the Bob Dylan
oh
movie.
yeah, of course.
And it was on the Fox lot, so it was really kind of brought back a lot of good memories, actually, not bad memories, being back home on the Fox lot and in the theater there watching the screening. And the cast was there for the screening. The cast
Timothy
crew.
Chalamet.
Yeah, he was there, and
and,
all the cast was there, moderated by Gwyneth Paltrow. Yeah, so it was a pretty fun evening.
Okay, so my Dylan contribution
Mm-hmm.
here is to tell everybody that Lorne Honigman, who is also a lawyer. Do you know
Yes,
Lorne?
I know the name. I don't know.
Well, he was
yeah.
on City TV
Yeah.
as their so before he became a lawyer, he
Yeah.
was like the legal specialist, and then he went and got his whatever law degree, and he got called to the bar or whatever you guys say. You lawyer guys say that's lawyer talking
Yeah.
over there. Okay, but then he now he's a lawyer, but he's a huge Dylan fanatic, and I'm going to produce a new Bob Dylan podcast for Lorne Honigman. So there's the exciting news for all the
Fantastic.
Dylan heads. That's coming very, very soon here too. Okay, let's talk about Celine Dion. How do you end up working with Celine Dion? Bury me in the details here. This is the next chapter of your life, and this chapter goes from 97 to 2014. That's a long chapter, but
It was my good fortune to be working at CBS when she signed to the label. She recorded a French album. When she recorded her very first English album,
is that Unison or am I-
Unison,
okay.
that's 100% right.
Yeah,
That's when I moved to LA to go work with Miles.
Okay.
So she came down to LA to record at David Foster's studio in Malibu. And remember, she's never recorded in English. Nobody knows her. So they didn't know anybody, had no friends. And Renee and Celine would say, Paul, come have dinner, come have lunch, come hang out. And so I spent a lot of time with them there. And then over the years, while I'm living and working in LA, she would come down to record an album, do a TV show, shoot a video, an award show, promotion. And they'd always, Renee and I would call me, and we became good friends. I mean, her husband, Renee.
Of course.
And sometimes over the years, through all the jobs, we would talk jokingly and sometimes seriously. Paul, one day, Renee said, you got to come work with us. You got to come work with us. And it happened one day while I was working at Fox. I remember I was having breakfast one day, and he kept me waiting, Renee. And there was not a nicer man on the planet than Renee, and charming and just kind and so good to everybody. And he was so apologetic for keeping me waiting so long. And he, it was some issue. He was talking about legal thing. And I said to him, well, you see, Renee, I just kind of, I said, if I was working for you, you wouldn't have to deal with this shit. And he goes, you're right, Paul. This is the time. And he literally offered me the job that day. And
you were vulnerable because you weren't ecstatic at Fox. Come on, I can read between the lines here.
But this was a dream because I, knew Renee and Celine, Dave Platel, who worked alongside me at Sony, and had went to work with Renee and Celine as part of their management team very early on in their career, was there, and I knew all the people there, and I thought, well, this would be like a dream. And remember, this is pre-Titanic, but she's already a huge, huge global star.
Right.
It was pre-Titanic, but it was just coincidental that Titanic situation, which is a great story, happened right at that time.
Well, give me that story.
So I'm now offered the job. I accept the job. Okay. I'm going to go work for Renee and Celine Dion. Okay. I tell my bosses at Fox, they're thrilled. Wow, Celine Dion, fantastic. I'm sitting in my office on the trailer on the Fox lot. I've given 2 weeks notice, whatever. And I get a call from Michael Gorfain, who's the agent for James Horner, the composer of the music for Titanic.
Right.
And Mike says to me, Paul, he's finished the score, James. And now that he's finished it, it cries out for a song. So he called his lyricist, Will Jennings. They've written the song. We would love to play it for Celine. Now, at this point, my boss has not heard the song. James Cameron has not heard the song. John Landau, the producer of the movie, has not heard the song. Because James Cameron was very insistent about this being a docudrama of historical proportions. So he didn't want any Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Celine Dion end title song. This the only music had to be original score, or when the ship was playing what they're playing going down, but no new music.
Okay.
Nothing commercial like that. So he didn't want it. Said, okay. So I arranged to go. This is way, 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 way before Celine's residency in Vegas, but they always loved Vegas, Renee and Celine. Renee to gamble, Celine to sit in the pool and hang out with the parents, go shopping. And went with James Horner and Michael Gorfain, was in the hotel room with them and Celine and Renee, and James Horner sat at the piano, played the song, sang it, he can't sing. And Renee suggested then and there, and they talked about the movie, that why don't we have Celine do a demo? And Gorfain said, well, we didn't come here to ask Celine Dion to do a demo, for God's sake. And Renee goes, yeah, but if James Cameron's going to hear the song, let him hear it with Celine, not a demo singer.
Good idea.
And Celine was kind of rolling her eyes because the song wasn't resonating, but she did the demo, and but the story isn't over. So she does the demo. This was, we had a screening of the movie in New York. It came out on Christmas Day, the movie, but it was in August. I remember there was a screening. James Cameron was there, John Landau, Tommy Mottola, all the Sony senior execs, of course, Renee and Celine, and we were watching the movie, and it was a longer version than the final cut, which was long. Yeah. And we had a meeting the next day, and Sony did not want Celine to do the song. Now, if you were alive back then and reading the trays,
I was alive, and I remember
Hollywood,
this because they were
all you would hear about
they were calling it like fish tar or something like that.
Yeah, because they were fighting on the set when they were making the movie. It was so far over budget. This movie was a true life disaster. Nobody wanted to go near it.
It was going to be a disaster.
Yeah, why, Celine, would you want it?
And it's called Titanic, so it's ripe for a disaster.
But Renee and Celine watched the movie, and they were caught up in the love story.
Yeah,
it totally captured them, and so against it was Sony. They said we're going to do it. Now Sony was still not convinced of the song, and they never planned to release it. And I remember New Year's Day, John Delp, who was Celine's exec at Sony and still there, called me saying, "Paul, I'm trying to find Renee. Can you find him? Where is he? The song is exploding," and it was just a phenomenon. That song on Celine's album, which is unbelievable, it's over 30 million worldwide. And the soundtrack, James Horner's score that only contains that one song, is about 30 million worldwide. So that song is like on 60 million albums.
That was a perfect storm. I mean, like, I do remember the advance hype was like, this is going to sink like a lead balloon, right?
Yeah.
It was, and they were comparing, I remember, like Waterworld. Remember? Because
I was working at Universal for Waterworld.
Okay, because that might have been the one that got the fish tar references, because Ishtar was this famous bomb. And have you ever seen Ishtar?
No.
Neither have I.
Of course,
somebody told me it's not as bad as you think. Like, I should probably revisit Ishtar. But Titanic, and then again, you have the young heartthrob Leonardo DiCaprio, and you had young women seeing the movie 4, 5, 6, 7 times for Leo. These crying parties, etc.
Yeah.
But I do remember the length, because when you rented that one on VHS, it came on 2 cassettes. This is what I remember about Titanic. You had to switch up cassettes, and that takes you back right there.
And I told you, like, I keep everything. I still have my tickets, my invitations to the Academy Award, to the Titanic, opening night gala party, and all everything goes along with it. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Again, you're working of all like these indie projects, these indie artists like Celine Dion. Like, I don't even know, like, there's nothing much bigger on the planet here than all this. But just I'm going to read this, but you're basically involved in the day-to-day management of Celine Dion's career. And basically that means handling all business affairs. You got to deal with Sony, of course, and all the music publishing, merchandise, live performances, the licensing of the master recordings, the film and television stuff. There's a lot in this bucket here. And there's no, I mean, how many artists are bigger than Celine Dion on this planet? This is
just to make no mistake, that's all true. But clearly, Renee was the manager, and Dave Platel, very, very much part of the senior management. I was part of the team working for Dave and Renee.
So why does it end for you working so closely with Celine Dion in 2014?
It was not my choice to leave. It was working with one of the biggest artists in the world, touring the world, doing things I could never have dreamt of doing. And they were both Renee and Celine and Dave and Barry and Rob and John and the whole team of people were the nicest people on the planet. They really surrounded themselves with good people. And when Renee got ill and he knew he was dying, the finance guy in Montreal and Laval who ran the finance for the company decided we needed to cut some costs here and there, and they just thought they didn't need to keep me on the payroll. They had an outside lawyer who's always been the lawyer. They didn't need it, and I was just part of the management. But they, the expense of my salary, I had an office, a secretary, etc. So Renee called me graciously and like a real mensch, and there was nothing to work out. They gave me a very nice severance package. There was no talk about anything bad. I remained on good terms with Renee and Celine, and when Renee sadly passed away not that much longer, Celine called me to ask to be one of the people who spoke at his service, which was
Nice.
very difficult. And to this day, I've always maintained a relationship, and for people who may have seen her recent documentary,
I've seen it.
There's this crazy little part in there. My mom's 102 years old, but 2 years ago when she turned 100, I said to Dave Patel, I said, Dave, if you're with Celine and just hanging around, take your phone up. Maybe you just want to wish my mom a happy 100th birthday. And she did.
Whoa.
And it was very touching because, first of all, it was very gracious of Dave, who actually was with the hockey game last night. He's still my dear friend.
Nice.
But it was very nice of Dave because at this time it was COVID. She was not talking or doing anything. And so he didn't, to bother for something silly like that. Why? But he did. And it really touched me because she wasn't doing anything. And as simple as it is, it was nice that she took the time. And for some unknown reason to me, that little clip is actually
It's in the
in the movie.
See, I got to rewatch it now that we're buds. I got to revisit that. But I did see
David
the doc.
Foster's not in the movie. No one else in the movie. But you hear, Celine. You hear Dave going, "It's time to do the birthday greeting for Paul's mom, Dorothy."
Oh my God.
And then you hear Celine go, "Hey, Dorothy, I want to join Paul and all the family." So yeah, it's kind of funny. But I wish her all the well. Wish her well in everything she's hopefully can continue to do. So
business is never personal, so this stuff happens. But are you at all responsible for the her live cover of AC/DC's "Shook Me All Night Long"?
No, I remember being in Vegas at the MGM when she was doing that at soundcheck for I think it was one of the VH1 Diva show, but I had nothing to do with it.
Okay, so you're off the hook for that one. We can't all be perfect. Okay, you had a career, but okay. Well, maybe we should skip the AC/DC covers there by Celine Dion. Man, oh man, we had a run there in this country in the 90s and beyond, really. But I'm thinking of like Alanis Morissette, Shania Twain, of course, Celine Dion. Like there was a run where the greatest female voices in the planet for pop music were coming out of this country.
There's no question. And Shania,
Sarah McLachlan, maybe not on that elite list, but what an amazing musician she is too. But
an incredible human being too, with her charitable work and foundation and everything. Wonderful.
I was at Massey Hall when she was just inducted into the
I was there.
You were there too? Yeah. Okay, we could have bumped into each other. I bumped into a bunch of great FOTMs that night. But Tom Cochran, of course. Is that why you were there?
No, I was Tom and Blue Rodeo. I was Blue Rodeo's lawyer, and I still have their record when they were a group, when Greg and Jim were a group called the Hi-Fis.
I played when I was in the woodshed talking to Jim Cuddy. I played some high fives.
The Hi-Fis, H-I-F-I.
Right. I played
like
some
Hi-Fi record, Hi-Fis.
I played some for them. Wow. Okay. Love them too. Yeah. They got a documentary coming out. Like
that's what I heard. Yeah.
Were you in Banff for the? There was a launch.
No,
in Banff
I wasn't. I heard about it. Yeah.
See, I get these PR and they're like, "Hey, would you?" And I think I said something like, "Oh, I'll put Jim," because I produced the Humble and Fred show, and I said, "I'll put Jim Cuddy on Humble and Fred because he can zoom in or whatever." I said, "Get me Greg Keeler. I've had my long deep dive with Jim. I want to talk to Greg Keeler, so maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't." But I kept waiting for them to send me to Banff for that premiere. It never came. Where's my invitation to Banff? Okay.
And as you know, you were there. They gave great speeches at Massey Hall. Yeah.
Well, Ron McLean.
Oh, it was incredible.
Was great, right? But that story, actually, I had heard from Jeff Merrick told me that story about the 72 Summit Series, and then Bobby Orr. He was hurt, but they were testing him out, and they needed a goalie. And there's the goalie from the Marlboros. I think it's
Yeah.
Marlboros. And then there's Greg Keeler between the pipes taking.
Unbelievable.
It's and Ron McLean, who may have been a couple of bottles deep at that point. He's a very good when music and sports converge. There's not many better.
Well,
than
I
Ron
didn't know
McLean.
that song, and I'm wondering, why is Ron McLean on stage?
Well, there you go. He's and he loves his music. I've had Ron over here.
Yeah.
He loves his music. And he loves his Great Lakes beer. So here, let me do this real quick here, and then we're gonna get back to your esteemed career here. But you don't drink beer. I learned this through
That's
my.
right.
So this is. But everyone who drinks beer knows the most delicious fresh craft beer is brewed right here in Southern Etobicoke. Believe it or not, it comes from Great Lakes Brewery. And I want to thank GLB. They'll be hosting us at a couple of events in 2025. And we love our relationship with Great Lakes Beer. I have a great relationship with Palma Pasta. So, Paul, do you eat Italian food? Is that
Oh, my God. Absolutely. Yes.
You never know. I have, and I know I don't know where you're staying or whatever, but I have in my freezer upstairs, I have a large lasagna from Palma Pasta.
Ooh.
If I could give that to you, would you take it?
I will absolutely take it and enjoy every bite.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Shout out to Palma Pasta. They will host us too at a TMLX event in 2025. This wireless speaker, you can listen to Slow Ride. I'm thinking of all the songs I heard on Dazed and Confused. What a great soundtrack that was. But you can also listen to Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. He went to Winnipeg and collected some great stories from small business owners, and he's been packaging them up in Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open. But not only Winnipeg, because I got to shout out Ty the Christmas Guy. It's his season, and he's got a great store called Retro Festive. It's in Oakville, and he was the season finale guest on Yes, We Are Open. And I urge everyone to listen, including you, Paul.
I'll do it.
You got to do it on that new speaker you got there. I know you can't afford a good speaker like that, so there you go. I want to also give you a measuring tape, the green measuring tape. That's from Ridley Funeral Home, and I urge everyone to subscribe and listen to Life's Undertaking, which is a great podcast from Ridley Funeral Home that I get to produce and co-host, and he'll be here Wednesday, Brad Jones, to record a new episode. What else? Piece of advice, because you live in LA, so this will not help you, but all your loved ones. Your mom's 102?
102. Yeah, just
She
saw her
lives
yesterday.
in
Lives here in Toronto, yeah.
Okay, your mom's probably got a drawer full of old cables, old electronics, old devices. Who knows what's going on there? Don't have her throw that in the garbage. She needs to go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and find out where she can drop that off to be properly recycled so those chemicals do not end up in our landfill.
Good idea.
Peter Gross's mom is 101, and Peter wanted her to come on Toronto Mike to talk about like stuff that you never click. What was it like living through the Great Depression? You know, all these things I can't really ask many guests about. And she said yes, and we were like very excited because it was going to be Peter Gross, his mom Marilyn, and I were going to be on this show. And then she calls up her son Peter and says, I've given it some more thought, and I've lived my whole life not being famous. And she was worried being on Toronto Mike would make her too famous, and she's decided not to appear on Toronto Mike. So Marilyn Gross will never be as famous as she deserves to be because she's not going to visit the basement like you're doing right now.
All right.
There you go. So we'll get your mom on Toronto Mike. Okay. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground. This is kind of a recap as we wind down here. But you're in town for how long?
I'm heading back on Thursday.
How many FOTMs will you have either lunch with or met while you're here? Because you told me you had lunch with Gary Topp.
That's true.
Okay. And that was like today or yesterday?
Today.
And did you tell Gary you're going to be on Toronto Mike?
Yeah.
And what did Gary say?
Have fun.
Get that lasagna, he said. Get that lasagna. Okay. Are you going to see FOTM Jonathan Gross?
I'm having breakfast with him at Bagel World on Wednesday.
And how do you know Jonathan exactly?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
From the
I've known him
Seinfeld episode, the Fusilli Jerry episode?
No, I know. You know, he lived in LA for a long time, and he's one of the people. When that Northridge earthquake happened, his wonderful wife said, who's sadly passed away recently, his ex-wife, we're moving back to Toronto. And they did.
Right.
But I knew him before moving there. I don't know how. I mean, we just have so many mutual
Well,
friends.
because I'm looking, you can't see it, but I have a copy of a great Lowest of the Low documentary called Subversives that Simon Head did, and I know that the DVDs come out of Jonathan Gross's distribution factory or whatever he's got going on there.
Yeah, he's put out some great things.
And of course, his sister Marjorie Gross,
yeah.
who's sadly no longer with us, she
Right.
died far too young, but she was a great writer for like Seinfeld, that Fusilli Jerry episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah, no, I've known him a
your buds
long,
of Jonathan
long time.
Gross. He's a cool cat.
Yeah.
All right, and any other FOTMs? Is that it for those two? Anyone else I should know about?
Well, I'm definitely going to see Darren Snow. Darren, 100%.
Well, Darren O'Brien is the
And
future
gotta-
FOTM, but you
that's
got to
right.
lock that down, man. I'm going to
Yeah.
count on you, or I'm going to delete this episode from the
Yeah.
archive. That's a threat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a promise. That's a
Yeah.
promise here.
It's going to happen.
All right.
It will. It will happen. I'm going to now go on record as saying it will happen.
Oh my God, it's been upgraded. This
Yeah,
is
it's been
exciting to me.
upgraded.
I really do.
I'm having such a good time, you see, that I'm going to make sure that.
Yeah, he'll have a good time too. There's no
Yeah, I
gotcha
know.
questions.
I know.
I'm just a big fan. I want to talk to Snow. And again, I did see him, although I was kind of like, do I say hi to Snow or do I leave him be? He was really chill at this movie theater, and I decided to just leave the guy alone.
He is chill, but he's happy to talk with.
Well, he's going to be in this basement talking to me for 90 minutes. So
Yeah, we were in London last year. He got some award show there, and at our table was the legendary R&B artist. I'm blanking on the name. Who he was?
Sing a song.
He was such a fan of, and he wouldn't introduce himself. He didn't want to go talk to me. He was just too shy and reserved. So Shalimar, it was the group Shalimar. Sorry, there, yeah.
Okay.
And so I went up to him and told him, and the guy went crazy because he actually used to be a DJ and he used to play Snow and like
Yeah.
he was like excited to meet Snow, and so but Snow wouldn't introduce himself. He's too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool trait.
Yeah.
That tells me he's Canadian.
he truly is.
Okay, so that's coming. So how did you start working with Snow? Like, how did you meet Snow?
It's about 6-7 years ago. I had never met him ever through all the years. And a friend, one of my best friends, Liz Ramus here in Toronto, she was living in the same building down in Toronto, right near like Wellington and Yonge, near the, I still call it the O'Keefe Center.
Sony Center, I think.
No, I think it's not even that
Oh.
anymore. It's not that. It's the
Meridian.
Meridian. There you go. Yeah.
Right.
And Jim Carrey played at the O'Keefe Center, opened up for Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, you got no respect. No respect at all.
But she said, I met this, I said, of course. I said, well, look, you should meet him. He's kind of floundering and not doing much. And she introduced us, and I just met him, really took to him. He played me some new music he'd done, and I loved it. And I said, let's see what we can do. So I've been helping him do some things. Of course, he got that incredible luck of a great song's a great song that when, Daddy Yankee, Drake has done Informer on the Junos. Justin Timberlake has done it with Jimmy Fallon on TV. So many people have done it, and it's been so many movies. And anyway, Daddy Yankee is one of the big fans, and he, of course, did it in Spanish. Now, Daddy Yankee could have just done it in Spanish, but he's such a fan. He said, I have to include Darren or Snow. And so it came out as con comma, Daddy Yankee featuring Snow.
I remember.
And I guess it's about 4 or 5 years ago. You can check. It's a fact. It was the most watched video on YouTube in the world, like 2-something billion views. It was insane. And then they wanted to get it even a bigger appeal in English, so they made a version with Daddy Yankee featuring Snow and Katy Perry. The interesting thing is, when they recorded the song, at the time, Darren, because of his past history with the law and his criminal record and things, he couldn't. His waiver had expired, and he couldn't get into the States. I took care of all that. He's been to the States many times, but not I took care. I got the people who know how to take care of it. Yeah. But but he was such a fan. They included him, and they took a film crew from Florida, came up to Toronto to film Darren so he could be in the video of that, which he is. And so they never spoke on the phone or met until a few years ago. Daddy Yankee was playing in Montreal. It's this big outdoor thing. And we went to Montreal, and Darren met Daddy Yankee for the first time. They embraced and talked.
Wow.
And then he came on stage, and it was beyond magical. I mean, it was just incredible sight.
Well, I got to talk to Darren about all of this.
Yeah,
you know,
there's
in the
so much more.
pre-streaming era, like let's go pre-streaming for a moment. You know, the number of, I mean, Celine Dion's on this list, but the number, although she's on the list, there's a song that you'll never hear on radio anymore. You know, the R. Kelly Celine Dion song is never going to get played again, right? Like that's gone from radio.
No,
right?
no, and it's so interesting. First of all, it was recorded in Montreal because he doesn't fly. I didn't know that.
And he wrote the song.
I
Believe
know.
I Can Fly.
I know. It's crazy. He doesn't fly. He took a bus from Chicago.
Okay.
And again,
It's like John Madden.
the idea, I'm pretty sure, came from Tommy Mottola at Sony.
Right.
For them. But again, you would think R. Kelly, Celine Dion. Here's an interesting thing about Celine. She worked with a lot of R&B artists, black artists, producers, songwriters. I mean, you know, Michael Jackson came to her show in Vegas. Prince came. Prince wrote a song for her. They recognize talent. But when you come to our rock and roll friends, it's like, nah, she's so unhip. She's so uncool.
Well, she does rock out a good AC/DC cover. Come on.
But for the R&B artists,
Yeah.
they only care about one thing, talent, you know?
Right.
And so they were thrilled to work with her, yeah.
Oh, now I lost complete track why I brought up the R. Kelly song. It was like a tangent there. But
Yeah.
maybe I'll talk about another artist who basically, he's pretty much like owing his like livelihood and rebirth to Celine Dion, because Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, okay? he said basically, because he has a writing credit on a song on the Celine Dion Christmas album. And he says that writing credit on the Celine Dion Christmas album gave him enough to live on, basically. Like,
wow.
So, you know what I mean? So anyway, and just remember where I was going. So, you know, shout out to Dee Snider. He's not going to take it anymore. I was going to, so I was talking about, geez, it left me again. There's too much in this episode here. So, pre-streaming. It came back to me, Paul. That's why I'm a professional. That's why I'm a award-nominated thing. Pre-streaming, very rare for a Canadian to hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100. Tom Cochrane did it with Life is a Highway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Bare Naked Ladies did it with One Week. They went to number one. Celine Dion multiple times. I can't remember all the times, but definitely more than just the R. Kelly duet. That's how I got stuck on the R. Kelly thing. Okay. But they aren't playing that one on the radio anymore. But anyways, that's not Celine's fault. That's not Celine's fault. But Informer went to number one. Like, so this list of, you know, Neil Young only did it once. Heart of
Wow,
Gold.
that's
One
amazing.
time. I know.
Wow.
Well, we talked about Bob Dylan's never gone to number one singing his own songs.
Crazy.
He's written a song. And Bruce Springsteen's never gone to number one on his singing his own songs.
Wow.
His only number one song that he wrote was Blinded by the Light, which was the Manfred Mann cover. But yeah, Dancing in the Dark is his top U.S. Billboard hit, and it went to number two. So all this is to say, what I'm telling you now is that Snow is more successful than Bruce Springsteen. That's what I'm telling you now, because he got the number one and Bruce didn't. So it's amazing to have that number one hit.
But, you know, he is in the Guinness Book of Records as having the biggest selling reggae single ever.
Yeah.
Even though, of course, he's white. But he's so accepted and loved in Jamaica. They embrace him in Jamaica.
That's fascinating, because he's not the only white Toronto artist to have a number one Billboard Hot 100 hit that is reggae. Can you name the other one?
I don't think I can.
Magic had a song called Rude.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they're a Toronto band.
Oh,
And they went to number one with Rude. Okay, that's reggae.
Yeah, no, I know Adam, who lives in LA now, and he's
All right, look at this. Look at this. Okay, so who else are you working with these days? So I guess after post Celine Dion, see, I put a little accent on that. I'm working on it. Celine Dion. Post Celine Dion, you basically are working for yourself now. You're at Paul Farberman Entertainment. Okay.
Yeah.
And you want to shout out? So we've talked about Snow here, who's going to be in the studio. Look forward to that. But anyone else you want to shout out that you're working with these days?
Not really, because
Top secret. You have to kill
no,
me.
there's nothing top secret at all about what I'm doing. But when I stopped working with Ray and Celine, I said, "What am I going to do now?" I need a job. I am not a millionaire. I wasn't Celine Dion's manager. I had a good paid job, but I got to make money.
No
I
writing
got kids.
credits on any Rush songs.
No, that's right. So I decided, well, I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to manage some new artists. And there was a young artist, I don't want to mention his name, a great kid from the Toronto area. And I was introduced to him by Fred Levy here in Toronto, accountant, business manager to the Stars. Yes, it's Eugene Levy's brother.
Wow.
And a wonderful man. And he suggested this kid who was looking, and this kid had been discovered by Justin Bieber on YouTube, and Bieber brought him down to LA for a while. He was living with him. The kid was on Ellen show, and I met him. He had to come back to Canada because he was starring in a TV show here, acting and playing an artist. And I was David Steinberg was the lawyer, and we the day we were supposed to sign the contract, I woke up. I said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a manager at this point in my life. I don't have the time to invest in a new artist, knowing the way the business is. It will take 2 or 3 years at best before he makes any money, and therefore I make any money working as a manager on a commission basis. And it's just so difficult. I don't want to do that. That being said, I never discourage, and on the contrary, I encourage any young artist to pursue their dreams. Someone's going to success. You don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be, at the top of the charts. But if you can pursue your craft and your love and pay your bills and enjoy life, then all the power to you, and, pursue your dreams. And I do often help out, even this isn't an advertisement for people to call me.
Go ahead.
But there are people.
You've earned it.
Like an incredible human being from Toronto named Story, Storry, who I love and adore, and she knows it. I just saw her perform over in England recently, and I give her guidance, advice. I don't charge her because she's just, starting out trying to pursue her dreams, and I support her and her manager and her team. And she helped her get an agent in London. She opened up this summer for Sting some shows for Tom Jones. Is an incredible story, and hopefully you're all going to hear more about her. I think she's just releasing a new record any day.
Listen, you brought it all back to the police with the Sting shout out here.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the police picnic here. Paul, I got to say, we were chatting about this. I think right after your name was dropped in the Catherine McClenahan episode, we started messaging each other back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you came up again, and you came up again. And I'm like, who the hell is this mythical figure, this Paul Farberman? He's dating Catherine McClenahan. Like, give me a break. I would retire right then and there. Holy smokes. But, dude, it was worth the wait. We didn't half-ass this on Zoom or something. We waited to get you in the basement, and you were full value, man. What a career, and what great stories. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks. I really enjoyed it.
So I have one piece of advice, one wish for you. One demand, I suppose, before I do my extra. I demand that your heart will go on. Right, Paul?
I'll take that. Thank you.
And that. I'm thinking Stu Stone says do it bigger. And that brings us to the end of our 1,601st show. Whew. You could have had milestone episode 1,600, but it went to Gah. Toronto.
That's right.
Gah. They're looking for some representation. They make music nobody wants to hear. It's wonderful. I love that band. Gah. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. I'm very active on Blue Sky. I'm at torontomike.com there. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. Palma Pasta. Paul, don't leave without your lasagna, buddy.
I'm not. I'm taking it.
RecycleMyElectronics.ca. That's for your mom to go to. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Moneris, you've got your speaker there.
Yeah.
And Ridley Funeral Home. Don't forget your measuring tape, Paul. I'll see everybody tomorrow. This is kind of neat. I got Banjo Dunk and Fremlin, Banjo Dunk, and Douglas Cameron. Do you remember the song Mona and the Children? Mona?
I don't.
Okay, this was like in the 80s.
Yeah,
I saw it on much music. Yeah, you missed it, but a lot of people actually missed it. But he wrote that song, but now they're in Whiskey Jack together. They got new music. This will be a great chat. See you all then.